America's best days can still be ahead, and I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution.
Brand new week. Glad you're with me. I'm John Reid, and you're watching the Reid Revolution, or listening to the Reid Revolution, or however you're consuming your podcast this morning. We're very glad that you are with us, and a lot to talk about here. I mean, pretty serious news, and I am surprised that people are letting things slide the way they are. You know, we're 1 week into the war, so we're going to talk about that in a couple of seconds. And we're already seeing domestic terrorism. Nobody seems to want to pay attention to it, but that's what's happening in our own backyard. And this isn't just an immigration debate about illegals being here and committing crime, which Democrats still won't acknowledge is happening. We're now seeing domestic terrorism directly related to what has happened overseas. And this is the problem when you have a society that's splintered and is not united for your country. You have a bunch of people who are here who have competing interests, things that they believe in more than they believe in the United States. I mean, I don't know why they're in the United States except to make money and to get away from oppressive regimes. But their religion, one thing you need to understand about people, their religion is always going to trump everything else. It's just the truth. So, if they are a hardcore evangelical Christian, you can count on that guiding principle to be the most important thing for that individual. And you have to calculate that in if you have an issue that you're dealing with. I mean, it's why it was legitimate to ask Pat Robertson when he was running for office, hey, you're an evangelical Christian, and let's say that the Congress of the United States passes legislation and overrules you. If you're president, you can veto something, but if they overrule you, will you be able to execute the responsibilities of your job if you were instructed to in an appropriate manner, if it contradicts what you personally believe? That is a real issue for people who are in elected office. It is not an unfair question to ask. And it's going to be a bigger problem now because we've focused so much on diversity. We have very little in common anymore. I mean, think about it. Tell me one or two things that everybody in the country would agree on. Can you think of what that is? What would that be? Well, I mean, what would that be? Freedom of speech? No. I mean, not everybody believes in freedom of speech now. They believe in speech that they approve of, but I mean, you can't even say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman without losing your job today. So no, I would say, and the people who claim to be all about freedom are the ones who will cause you to lose your job if you say a man is a man and a woman is a woman. So don't tell me that freedom of speech is the preeminent issue. Freedom of religion, I don't think that everybody is on board with that. In fact, the very people who are pushing the radical Islamic agenda are the people who are silencing Christians. We're not going to call it Easter break anymore. We're going to call it spring break. I mean, they're just little things that are big things that indicate that we're changing the nature of the society because we focused on diversity so extensively for 25 years. We really don't have a lot in common anymore. I think we probably do have more in common than we would like to admit, but the left, they are executing with great precision the textbook about dividing everybody. So we have domestic terrorism happening here, and everybody's just kind of ignoring it. And the only way, this is for our audience here in Virginia, and I'm sure predominantly the people who are watching this program who know me are from all over the state of Virginia. The only way your voice gets heard in Washington is to have a congressperson in the House of Representatives who will speak out on your behalf, who presumably will cast a vote to represent your beliefs. That is all in jeopardy. Starting last Friday, March the 6th, the votes began for this illegal gerrymandering scheme that the Democrats are pushing through here in Virginia. So I want to start every program between now and April 21st pleading with you, even if you're a traditionalist and you want to vote in November, one time you like to go stand in line at your civic duty. I'm not mocking you. I understand that. I think that that's a very noble mindset, but it isn't working for us. I don't know if you've noticed there've been a lot of losses lately, and the system is different than the one you grew up with, and it's really important that you understand the system that we grew up with does not exist anymore. And there may be cheating. I don't know. I there's no way to deal with that unless we regain some parity with the Democrats in state government. Um, I don't think it takes a genius to see that the voter rolls are not secure. I mean, in fact, this year in most places, they're using the voter rolls from last November. Well, it's March now. So forgive me, but people have died, people have moved, people have gone to jail, people have gotten out of jail. I mean, the voter rolls from last year are not accurate, but nobody seems to give a damn. I don't know why. If you're running an election, accurate voter rolls that close where you know exactly how many people, on the day that this finishes, the maximum number of votes is this number. That's important. But no one seems to care, or at least no one in power seems to care. And I think the Democrats are deliberately using their power to try to keep things very loosey-goosey and not clear, so that if someone in their midst, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, whoever that is, wants to cheat, they can cheat. Meanwhile, they'll swear up and down they're not cheating. They'll say that illegals aren't voting, but then when Governor Youngkin discovers that there's 1,600 people that he's aware of who are illegal on the voter rolls, they'll fight like hell all the way to the Supreme Court to keep those people on the voter rolls. Don't tell me you're not willing to cheat, because you are, and you've demonstrated it over and over again. You're fighting to keep the system in place with things that are so blatantly, obviously not correct for anybody, Republican or Democrat. They're not right. One side is trying to clean it up so that it's transparent and clear for everybody, and the other side is deliberately fighting to try to keep things very, very unclear and confusing. And the Republicans are the ones trying to clear it up, and the Democrats are trying to keep it confusing. And I think there's a reason for that. Can I prove that there's cheating? No, I cannot prove that there's cheating at the moment. But I don't think it's like if I catch somebody with their hand in my pocket reaching for my wallet and they haven't stolen the wallet yet, forgive me, but you're a thief. I don't have to catch you 2 blocks away with my wallet with the money out on the sidewalk for me to realize that you're a thief. There is a movement afoot to be deviant with elections. So what do you do? If you're a responsible person and you want fair elections, and I'm not saying that I got to win. I'd like to win. I'd like to be able to convince people to vote for me, but I'm not saying I got to win. I can accept losing as long as I know that it's a fair election. How about that for an idea? That seems like old-fashioned mindset, right? But that's my mindset. But I'm not convinced it's a fair election. You don't have any choice right now. You need to get out and cast your vote. And there are a whole bunch of people who are spreading a lot of information, which I think is probably well-intentioned, but it's not helping at the moment. And I think it's inaccurate. There are a bunch of people who say, oh, well, don't vote until after April 16th. Look, the election has started. It started on Friday. The courts are not going to intervene. We're going to have the 45 days of voting up until April the 21st. That is the final day of voting. And we now know that getting the votes in early does a couple of things. It secures your vote so that no one can steal your vote. No one can show up at the county courthouse and say, "Hi, I'm John Reid," and some dingbat says, "Oh, okay, Mr. Reid, here's your ballot," and then they vote, and it goes into the counting machine with no notation. And then when the real John Reid shows up, they say, "Oh, you've already voted," and then the real John Reid votes some sort of provisional vote, and there's no way to undo the vote that's in the machine. Another example of how we don't have a secure voting system. We just don't. Um, it's possible to have that, but no one seems committed to having a secure voting system. And that's why the Republicans have to pass the SAVE Act. And the fact that they're not doing it sends me into orbit. Like, what in the hell is the point of running for office, supporting a candidate, giving any donation, even $1, if you guys can't get it together on the SAVE Act, which is about as basic as anything is, and the Republicans in the Senate don't seem to be able to pull it together. I mean, it is the kind of thing that makes you think, if we can't get that done, what is the point? The country's over with if Republicans can't push that through. I mean, to me, if you're not capable of doing that, then the whole thing is lost. We'll see whether they get it done, but the fact that we're sitting here going back and forth, and we've got all these influencers and activists trying to put pressure on, but what pressure should you? I mean, should you have to utilize to get this through? This shouldn't even be controversial. The polling indicates it's not controversial. The only people it's controversial with are the hardcore Democrats who want to be able to cheat. So, um, we're stuck with the system we have at the moment, and the only way to make this work is to be too big to rig. And that means that even if you're exhausted, and I'm exhausted, I'm financially exhausted, I'm mentally exhausted, I am tired of this. I will tell you that. But even if you're exhausted, you better show up to vote. And you better tell your husband or your wife and your kids to show up to vote. Vote no between now and April 21st. That means looking up where you live and going to the county courthouse or to the library, wherever they have early voting. They're basically burning money in your locality because the Democrats insisted on this stupid 45 days of voting, which is really unfair because who knows what's going to happen between now and April 21st. But they don't care. The Democrats have figured out how to maximize every person in a mental ward, every convict in the jail, every person who's comatose in a nursing home will miraculously vote Democrat, and they're going to make sure those votes get to the polling place. I mean, the Democrats know what they're doing. In a certain way, I've got to give them credit. They have figured out where their votes are, and they're going to maximize their votes. Republicans can't even pass things in a formal sense in the Senate. So you better show up and vote no between now and April 21st. I am going to go out and check the mail a little later today and see if my ballot, because I'm on the permanent absentee list, whether my ballot has arrived in the mail here. And then whatever day it arrives, I'll share that with you and show you the totally bogus language, leading, fabricated language that the Democrats have used to explain this proposal. And we'll rebut that on air just so you can go around and rebut it too when people say, "Oh gosh, it seems so fair." It's not fair. It is a con job of the highest order from the Democrats, and you need to be aware of that. So every day between now and April 21st, I can't say it enough. Vote early, get your vote in, and vote no against this gerrymandering scheme. It is a spit in the face of everybody who wants a fair democracy in Virginia. And the people of Virginia have already made a decision that they don't want politicians drawing the lines. And can I just tell you this? Abigail Spanberger at the end of last week said, "Oh, don't you understand this is a temporary measure?" Look, Abigail Spanberger, no one tried to be nicer last year than me. I tried to be a gentleman. I was polite to everybody. Apparently, that doesn't matter. Abigail lied to you last year. I'm sorry about that. She said she was not interested in redistricting the state. Nothing has changed. The whole time, we knew exactly what was going on in other states. She lied to you. And you you have to start to recognize when people are lying to you, even if you like them. I mean, maybe you're some sort of middle of the road person and you thought, oh, Abigail seems so nice. She's a soccer mom. And, everybody says she's a moderate. I don't know why they said she was a moderate, but everybody said she was a moderate. And, Republicans didn't successfully push back on that. The press is in the tank for her. So everybody believed that she was much. She lied to you because as soon as she got in there, the first thing she did, besides saying that local law enforcement wouldn't cooperate with the feds, was she signed this bill to redistrict here in Virginia and take away the voice for all of these Virginians. 40 some percent of Virginians who vote Republican every election will not have a voice in Washington. I mean, come on. you know, she's playing politics 100%. And I think you should have known that from somebody who worked for the CIA and who was not a moderate in Congress. But okay, we're stuck where we are at the moment. But please don't let her keep lying to you. This is not a temporary thing. It says it's a temporary thing, but she's not going to be governor. As Governor Gilmore pointed out, she's not going to be governor when this ends. So she can say everything she wants, but if let's say we have a Democrat governor following her in 4 years, you think that person's going to go along with returning to the old way and putting the lines back the way they are today? Hell no, that's not going to happen. So don't be lied to. Be mad about it. You should be angry about it. I mean, don't go into the streets and be like a Democrat. Don't harm innocent people or set buildings on fire. Don't march around and block the roads and impede other people. But you should be mad about this because you've been lied to. And you should take action by voting and spreading the word that the answer for this gerrymandering scheme is to vote no. All right. We're going to talk to former Virginia Governor George Allen about this in a couple of minutes, so I don't want to go on too long about that, but I feel like I've got to start every show with that admonishment for everyone not to just let this slide. Oh, the other thing about voting now is it means that Republicans who don't have a lot of money, I mean, the Democrats they've sent $5 million from D.C. to buy TV ads. National Republicans have cut us loose. And I'm mad about that and frustrated by that. It doesn't surprise me after what I witnessed last year. But the only way to fix that is to win this election. So if you get your vote in right now, it means that whatever little bit of money is left to go after chasing votes doesn't have to go after you because your vote is already in. I mean, it really is an important situation here for you to contemplate. All right, back to the war. Well, they didn't pick the little Ayatollah, Ghazala Hashmi, as Ayatollah of Iran. I'm so disappointed. I thought maybe we'd get rid of Ghazala Hashmi and she could go really be a radical Islamist leader. There's the little Ayatollah. If you zoom in on, there's the Virginia flag with the Arabic on it. And there's the little Ayatollah, Ghazala Hashmi. Can you zoom in on it, producer Dan? Do you have? Because she's not very pleasant looking. I thought she had a more pleasant look on her face. But the little Ayatollah will continue to be our burden here in Virginia instead of ruling Iran. The way things are going, though, there'll be another opportunity very soon if Donald Trump can get rid of the real Ayatollah, maybe Ghazala Hashmi. Where was she this weekend? Did she march for the terrorists in Iran? Remember, I'm not making this up. She went and marched with Hamas for the Palestinians with her little bullhorn. She's not so much as a leader as she is a protest person. So forgive me. I know people think it's rude of me to bring this up. No, I'm pointing out what you should have been paying attention to in the first place, which you have a radical Islamist now as the lieutenant governor of Virginia who's about to run for governor in 3 years. And if you don't care about it, your children are going to care about it. Your daughter's going to care about it. Your gay friends are going to care about it when there is a radical Islamic movement that is based here in Virginia. Why do you think the Mamdani people gave money to Ghazala Hashmi's campaign? What, because she's a nice lady? She's not a nice lady. Even the Democrats don't like her. They want her over me, over a Republican, because they stick together. But they don't like her. She's not a nice person. So, there's a reason that they have the radical Islamists in America have funneled money to her campaign and are supporting her now. It's because slowly you're seeing the Islamic takeover in Virginia. And it's not me attacking Muslims. It is me saying you don't have a reform movement. Ghazala Hashmi is not standing up saying, I am a reformist within my own religion. You won't hear that from her. Ergo, she's walking with Hamas in Monroe Park in Richmond. She's standing there with the Antifa BLM crowd. The people who are trying to take down Western civilization and take down the United States, she's a part of that movement. That should disqualify her for leadership. And the fact that she won't talk to anybody about it is a problem. Here, let me just share this with you in case you missed it last week. I don't think I can play it enough. This is the attitude of the little Ayatollah at the state capitol in Richmond. God, can you believe that? Where are you supposed to talk to an elected official if you can't talk to them at the state capitol in Richmond? Nick Minnock, the reporter at WJLA, tries to approach Ghazala Hashmi in the hall at the state capitol. He identifies himself. Look, she rolls her eyes. And the security guard pushes Nick out of the way. I mean, I was a reporter at the Capitol. That's where you ask questions of elected officials. And she rolls her eyes. And the question is about a dead Virginia woman who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Murdered at a bus stop. And Ghazala Hashmi, when she hears the question, she rolls her eyes. She can't be bothered by you, the peasants, or by the reporter from WJLA in Northern Virginia, which largely voted for her. I mean, this is the type of arrogance. You should hold people accountable for this. You should hold people accountable for this. If your instinct as a political leader is not to engage, we got a problem. And she refuses to engage. And nobody, I have not seen anybody holding her accountable. She got elected. She was sworn in on the Quran. Nobody even I asked that question and I was roundly attacked. Oh my God, how dare you? How could you bring that up, John? Well, I think it's important. I think it's important. What the document, the text that you're sworn in on says something about your belief system. So what does the little Ayatollah believe? What is she saying? How will she manage the moment where, as I use the Pat Robertson example, how will she manage her, I guess, conflict when Sharia law is being promoted in certain communities in Virginia, and she has the law of Virginia in conflict? How will you manage that? And I'm not making it up. It's happening in Europe all over the place right now. Sharia courts are a part of the society, separate from the government. And so, you can always read a book and hypothesize like it's science fiction. Oh, what would you do if? We're not making this up. We're not making this up. This is real. And everybody in Virginia, including the people who should be asking questions, even if they vote for her, it's a fair question. They didn't bother. They didn't censor themselves when it came time to ask me unpleasant questions, did they? If you remember, every nasty question you could possibly ask was thrown at me. I stood there and answered them. I stood there and engaged with reporters. I didn't roll my eyes and storm off. I got a problem with that. And since no one else is going to stand up and say it, once again, I will be the person to stand up and point it out. And before we go, because I do want to get to Governor Allen, I have to tell you, it's a dangerous time right now. You remember last weekend, not this most recent weekend, but the previous weekend, I was in New York for meetings with a group of donors and kind of influential business owners in New York. Very interesting collection of meetings. But I noticed that the city was not as vibrant as it normally is, even in February and March, right? I took note of it. I lived in Manhattan for a while, so I know what it's normally like. People were scared in New York because they anticipated that with the large radical Muslim population, not people who keep to themselves, but with a large hostile group, and they presented themselves. Nobody pays attention to it. If you go into Times Square, there are radical Muslim black leaders who openly talk about murdering white people in Times Square, and everybody just walks by and goes, "Oh, I'm not allowed to say anything about it." That's different from the Muslim population. But now that there's a war and the Ayatollah has been taken out, pay very close attention to who is standing up for the United States and who's conflicted here. If you have someone who is concerned and it's like, yeah, man, I've started unfollowing people, even if I like them on other issues. If they're conflicted about whether getting rid of the Ayatollah in Iran is good or bad for the world, then you are not grounded. You don't know what you're talking about. And, if you're a younger person, I can kind of excuse it because maybe with the modern media focusing only on America being the threat to the world, you're ignorant of the last 47 years of history. So you need to pause for a moment and listen to those of us who have lived through it. I watched it as a child on television and then lived it as an adult when I was living in the Middle East. Iran is the source of terrorism, the largest funder of terrorism in the world. And we got to get it under control. I'm very pleased that Donald Trump has gone after Iran. I'm very pleased that he is slaughtering these people. And I wish there was another solution. Call me crazy after 47 years and there hasn't been a solution. At some point, you reach a place where you go, the only way to get rid of these people is to kill them. It's awful. It's terrible. I don't like it. But tell me what the solution is. Negotiate. We've been doing that on and off for decades. Give them money. Barack Obama tried that. Let's be friends. I'll give you all this money. And that way you can build up your economy and you can be, your own country and not dependent on anybody. And Barack Obama tried that. Didn't work. They used the money and they went and started killing more Americans and more Westerners. They started actively working to murder Westerners. So at some point, really, no matter how benevolent you are, you need to reach the conclusion, gosh, these people want me dead and they want you dead and they want the decline and destruction of the West. Maybe we have to do something about it, even if it's not our instinct. And Donald Trump is doing that. And for those of you who are worried about Donald Trump, going back on his pledge of no foreign wars, we're 1 week into this. For God's sake, what do you think? It's like everyone has a video game mentality today where you sit down in your underwear in the basement and you play a video game for 45 minutes with random people on your team from around the world. And 45 minutes into it, the game's over and you either play another game or you come out of the basement, go do whatever, stuff your fat face with French fries. This is not a video game. So I'm sorry, it's not a TV show. At minute 58, there's not going to be a conclusion here. And I would suggest to you, as someone who's watched this stuff for a long time and done a lot of study, 1 week when there's a war like this is not a lot of time. So before you think we're into another forever war, which I concede, in Afghanistan, we were there a lot longer than we expected. It didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. I would suggest to you that part of that was the leadership of the United States not being aggressive enough, having lawyers. If there's one thing you should take away from the last 50 years of American war efforts, is that as soon as the lawyers get involved, as soon as the diplomats get involved in the war, like let the diplomats talk at the beginning and see if you can stop the war. But once the war starts, kick them out of the room, kick the lawyers out of the room, and kill everybody you have to kill. It's awful. But once you've crossed that line into a war setting, it's the only way to win. And they're going to do that to us. They got no problem torturing, killing, humiliating, abusing Americans overseas. So, I mean, this is just a reality check here that has to happen. I think Donald Trump, say what you want about him, he's living in reality. This wasn't going to resolve itself. The negotiations haven't worked. There is a real threat to the existence of the West and to the United States if Iran were to continue to work on a nuclear weapon. And this is the moment to stop it. This is the moment to stop it. And I think that's really important for us to recognize. So I hate that we're in this situation, but I'm glad if we're in it that it's somebody like Donald Trump, who I think will be brutal with these people. And my hope is that, it's going to take more than a week. Newsflash for you. It's going to take more than a week. But in the long run, I think we're going to be better off here. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, especially now that we've imported these people into the United States and they're throwing. I mean, I guess this is the point I wanted to make at the beginning. You saw the little protest that nobody's paying attention to up in New York. That was a real IED. That wasn't a smoke bomb. I mean, you've got people in the United States now who are going to create improvised explosive devices here to kill Americans who dare go out and protest. We had a small protest in Richmond yesterday. I wish I had been back in town to see it, and I would have gone and stood there. I don't ever be one of these rabble rouser types, but I think it's important to stand up for what is right. And you got to be careful because you have radicals now in the United States. And going back to what I said at the beginning, never underestimate someone's connection to their religion. It's hard for us to fully comprehend how important religion is for many, if not most people around the world, because our society has changed so much, where we don't talk about religion and it's something you do a couple of times a year. There are people where their entire existence is directly related to their religious faith. And every decision is made in that context. And I just don't know that the Western mind, given that we have changed, is capable of understanding that there are millions and millions of people who would gladly die for their religious beliefs. And if you're not fully focused on that being the reality, then you will make bad decisions because you'll assume that their mindset is similar to our mindset. And it's just not the case. And if you import those people into the United States, and if you promote those people in the United States, if you put them in leadership positions, really don't be surprised that you're going to have trouble. All right. You see that former Virginia Governor George Allen is with us. We will take a quick break and we'll return, talk to him about the gerrymandering vote and some of these other issues. He was on the Foreign Relations Committee when he was in the United States Senate. So let's get his take on what's happening overseas when we return on this Monday edition of the Reid Revolution. Back on this Monday, I'm John Reid. The Reid Revolution continues, and we get the opportunity to talk to former Virginia Governor and former U.S. Senator on the Foreign Relations Committee, George Allen. And Governor, I appreciate the chance to talk to you. I hope you're feeling better. I heard that you had a little surgery. You doing okay? Uh-oh, did we lose the camera? Well, doggone it. Producer Dan, he was up there for a second. Now I don't see him. You can't hear Governor Allen. Let's see. It looks like his mic is muted.
Here we go.
There he is. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm just getting all this stuff straight here. I got blocks on top of blocks.
Oh, okay. To get the camera right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's right on myself. I can't close other Riverside browser tabs box that is right over my face.
Don't touch anything. It's you look good and we can hear you, so don't touch anything. I just leave it as it is. It's like the plane is on autopilot. We'll go with this. So real quick, I heard you had surgery. Am I allowed to bring that up? You doing all right?
Yeah, I have ice on my knee. I had right knee replacement surgery a couple weeks ago. Generally what's going on, I get on a show like you and it'll melt the ice on my knee because I get fired up. So one of the great things about technology, the internet, and Zoom meetings and all the rest is I can operate right here out of the kitchen table.
Good. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. So let's start with the gerrymandering issue. And I know this has probably got you hot. And Governor Spanberger actually came up and said, "Don't worry, everybody. This is just a temporary thing." She did that going into the vote on Friday when the voting started. This isn't temporary. Come on, right?
Right. It's for 6 years. 6 years doesn't seem really temporary. And what it is a suspension of our for Virginians, our constitutionally protected rights to have honest representative democracy. And so what they're doing, it'd be like saying, let's suspend the First Amendment for 6 years, that you won't have freedom of expression and representation in Congress or in any legislative body is the voice of the people. And so what they're trying to do is inveigle the people of Virginia to really silence their voices. And when you look at these maps, John, when it's not just theoretical, when you look at these maps, you see what they're doing is for people who live in rural areas, outer suburbs, from the Shenandoah Valley. There goes my cane. That's gesturing. I hit a cane. At any rate, the people on the Northern Neck, the Middle Peninsula, New Kent County, York County, Goochland, Powhatan, they're going to be represented by people in Northern Virginia. And it's just so wrong. And they're taking one representative away from the Hampton Roads area to give it to Northern Virginia. And it's silencing their voices. Now, the Democrats will say this is because of President Trump and that's that. That's good. I'm glad you got that up. Mm-hmm. They're saying this is because of President Trump and what Texas did. And I've said from the beginning, President Trump should not have been pushing and pressuring Texas and other places to do this abnormal mid-decade redistricting or gerrymandering. Texas did it, and then California did it and offset Texas. I like the principled stand that Republican legislators in South Carolina and Indiana did, and they said, no, we're not going to do this. Now, Virginia has a special protection in that just 6 years ago almost now, 66% of the people of Virginia voted to amend our Constitution to prohibit politicians from designing districts. If you'll put that back on, this was done by David Poole, who's an independent. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. Mm-hmm. This shows these districts, how much is controlled. Right now, there's 3 congressional districts that are Northern Virginia congressional districts. Mm-hmm. And that's the top one. And the kind of the burnt orange is Northern Virginia, which is nothing like burnt orange, Texas. But you see that now they're going to have 5 districts that they control. And it subsumes, and in each one of them, you see it subsumes either the Shenandoah Valley in 3 of them. The Shenandoah Valley, Buffalo Gap is in with Arlington or Alexandria and Fairfax.
No connection. Those people share none of the common concerns about issues.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, our Constitution says you're supposed to have compact, contiguous districts of communities of similar interest. Communities of similar interest. And rural communities, small towns, outer suburbs, they really don't have much in common with inside the Beltway or very densely populated liberal elitist Northern Virginia. Right. They don't have forestry and dairies and ag interests or any of that in Northern Virginia, and it's just so wrong to do something like this to the people of Virginia. So I'm with a group called No Gerrymandering Virginia. It's a bipartisan group, John, and I know you've tried to be bipartisan. You try to stand on principle rather than situational principles or situational ethics. And Chap Peterson, a Democrat from former state senator from Northern Virginia, and I have an op-ed that was posted online today in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and we point out how wrong this is. That and Chap's writing it as well, that Republicans will be consigned to 9%. 9% of the Virginia congressional representation in Washington will be allocated to Republicans. 91%, or 10 districts, will go to Democrats. And this is not representative democracy. Especially, John, I know you love history like I do. This is the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence from a British monarchy. And now we have outside elitist monarchical interests. And I almost feel like we're the modern day Jack Jewetts. Jack Jewett, right in the Virginia's Paul Revere, trying to warn people that this is what's going on and warning about this takeover of Virginia for outside interests rather than the best interests of the good people of Virginia.
It's remarkable that the people who for the last several years have gone into the streets claiming that they're protecting democracy, American democracy, are more than willing, when it serves their purpose, to stomp on the votes and the voices of people they may disagree with in other parts of the state that they never go to. I mean, it shows a real disdain and disrespect for Southwest Virginia, for parts of Central Virginia and Southside Virginia, where people have a different value set than many of these people do in Northern Virginia. So, with all due respect to the crowd in Northern Virginia, which does think in a monolithic way, don't lecture me about democracy if this is your response to a national problem that you've identified, and that's to stomp on the voice and the votes of other people around the state. It was really insulting and revealing, I think.
Yeah, really, you're exactly correct, John. And it is, and then the language in this, they said they want to restore fairness. Well, we now have fairness in our districts in Virginia because of our constitutional amendment in Virginia that again was passed. Well, over 2 million people voted for it. Now they're rushing this through, and in my view, an unconstitutional way of trying to make a constitutional amendment. But I'm not going to get into all the legalities. You could get lawyers on, like Tim Anderson's very good on all the law part. But the reality is what they're trying to do is say, well, these other states did this and that they were wrong. And I agree, they were wrong, as was on both sides, Republicans and Democrats. But what they're having to do in Virginia is negate our protections in our Constitution for fair representation. So they're not restoring fairness. They're taking away fairness. And it's not just me saying this, John. There's a group out of Princeton who analyzes all the congressional districts across the country in various states. Virginia, along with maybe Arizona and a few other states, but there's only about 4 or 5 states that have a grade, a rating for their districts. And you look at our current districts, they're fair, they're compact. You have the 3 in Northern Virginia. You have the outer suburbs ones of Northern Virginia. You have the Shenandoah Valley. You have the Southwest, South Side, the Hampton Roads area. You have minority majority districts, which are required by the Voting Rights Act. And so it's a very fair, and right now it's 6-5 Democrat. And Abigail Spanberger just a few years ago was saying how terrible gerrymandering is. We need to oppose that. She had the right principles a few years ago, and now she's going along with this.
She's just totally changed it.
Yeah, and by the way, in her election last year, you were part of it. You did better than the top of the ticket, but Abigail Spanberger won the first and and second congressional districts. So if you have candidates and an agenda that are advocating a positive or meritorious agenda, they can win in those districts. And so in a legitimate election, it could end up being 7-4, 8-3 Democrat, but that's the people in those areas voting that way. And so they just have gone to such extremes to rig these elections to make sure that the Democrats win. In fact, some of the Democrats, Helmer in particular, a member of the General Assembly, they designed the district for them to run in. It's just
which is
so wrong
cynical. And I've heard a lot of Democrats really resent him for his behavior. They don't appreciate what he's done.
Yeah, and so he lives in Fairfax, and he's going to represent the Shenandoah Valley, parts of the Shenandoah Valley, which again has nothing to do with Northern Virginia as far as other than being in the same state. And so that's the self-dealing. This is what people hate. Politicians picking their voters, rigging elections, rather than the way representative democracy is supposed to work, and that is the people, the people, the owners of the government. It's the consent of the governed. But if they rig the consent of the governed to get outcomes they want, that is just so wrong and contrary to the foundation and founding principles of our country. And Virginia being the cradle of American liberty, of all places that ought to stand up for those enduring principles, it should be the people of Virginia. And whether they're Republicans, independents, libertarians, or Democrats. And our group, this No Gerrymandering Virginia, has Brian Cannon with us. He and I went all over Virginia for this constitutional amendment, he's a Democrat. They needed me to try to persuade Republicans for the constitutional amendment, and then it got through. And then the subsequent year, the Democrats took over the majority and wanted to keep them all together and passing it and then sending it to the voters. And the whole way this has gone about, again, is so wrong. There wasn't a single candidate last year. And John, you were on the campaign trail. You ran a grassroots campaign. We're trying to run a John Reid type campaign with our No Gerrymandering Virginia crew. We're not expecting any money from outside Republican sources or any of those folks. And we're trying to make sure people understand what's at stake in this, because in the elections last year, when you were running, your opponent, Abigail Spanberger, nobody, or anybody running for the House of Delegates, when they passed this in the final week right before Election Day, and Virginia doesn't have election days, we have election seasons for 45 days. And so they passed this a few days before the final day of voting. No one was saying, "Hey, elect me. If you elect me, we're gonna pass a constitutional amendment to gerrymander and rig districts in Virginia so that it'll be 10-1 Democrat," and assuring that. No one was running on that. Now, you do remember they were running on some of the other constitutional amendments, which will be voted on not on April 21st in this odd rushed election, but it'll be voted on in November later this year on regular election day, on reproductive rights, as they call it, and giving voting rights to felons and marriage equality issues. And they were running on that. There were delegates running, and in fact, your opponent was running on that. And so that's the proper way to do it, rather than this really ramming this
show
through.
your cards, be upfront with everybody.
Exactly.
No one gets held accountable for that. And this is the last chance to do that. Hold people accountable before everything changes. And it's going to be really difficult to fix this back to a fair situation for everybody if this gets out of control. I don't want to run out of time
before we go into that. I think that any political party, Republican or Democrat, who has to rig elections with gerrymandering must not have much confidence in the popularity of their ideas or the merits of their agenda. So they have to do this. And that really shows a paucity of integrity and also a lack of confidence that what they're actually running on is popular with the people when they have to jerry rig districts this way.
Yeah. Well, especially when they propose 51 different tax increases after they just talked about, affordability. I'm
Yeah,
hoping some people
it'll be
have
fun at
woken
the end
up.
of this session. It'll be interesting at the end of this General Assembly session to look at this affordability issue. And with the tax increases and rejoining that regional greenhouse gas idiocy, which is regressive, which is going to add 3 or 4, maybe more percent to everyone's power bill monthly, and a variety of other things. How much power bills will go up because of that, and the various taxes on employers and employees. I think Virginia, at the end of this, there's going to be a scoreboard, and I think Virginia is going to end up being less affordable and less competitive with the states we compete with for investment and jobs.
You got it.
Especially North Carolina and Tennessee.
Well, last week I had one Democrat who I like, nice person, disagree with them, but they told me, you don't understand, your definition of affordable is different than ours. And I said, gosh, really? What? I don't understand. We shouldn't have to go to the dictionary for this. They're like, no, we're going to make it more affordable for people who need it to be more affordable. And I said, oh, so it's not more affordable with just the price on the ticket or the price on the wall or the price at the gas pump. You're coming up with a government scheme to try to siphon money to certain people so they will have a more affordable situation in their life. That's not affordability. That is a government scheme. It's a socialist scheme.
Yeah,
redistribution.
Yeah. In fact, some of their schemes particularly on power bills, is redistributionist. They're saying, yeah, well, these rates, these power bills are going to go up, and it's very regressive. The people are hurt worse by having another 11, 12, 13% added to everyone's power bill every month for the offshore wind project and the Clean Virginia and the renewable and regional, regressive greenhouse gas idiocy, joining these loser high cost Northeastern states. All of that hurts lower and middle income working people the worst. And so they've come up with some scheme that if your poverty level, whatever it's 150% or whatever it is of the poverty level, your bills will only go up, say, 6%, not 12%. And the difference will be made up by those earning, say, over $80,000, and their bills will go up by 15 or 16 or 18%. And again, this kind of stuff, this is not going on in places like Tennessee or North Carolina or Georgia or South Carolina or Florida or Texas. And Virginia competes with those states. We're not competing with Maryland and New Jersey and New York and those states. And it's just going to make for the cost of doing business, the cost of living in Virginia much higher.
Yeah. All right. Look, I do need to run, but I got to ask you, when I worked for you, you were on the Foreign Relations Committee. I remember sitting in briefings about Iran attempting to get a nuclear weapon. Give me in 60 seconds what your snap assessment is of where we are right now with the decapitation of the Ayatollah and his leadership there.
Well, I think it's all good. I know right now there's some short-term pain. No question about it. Gas prices are up. I think it'll be temporary. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world. It's not just them, it's all their proxies, whether it's the Houthis or Hezbollah or Hamas. Syria was once part of that coalition, as well as Russia and China in their roundabout ways. But knocking them out makes it safer for America, safer for Israel, safer for our allies. It's not just knocking out the top of it and whomever else we need to knock out. It's stopping their nuclear weapons program, knocking out their long range and any missile technology. We got to knock out their drones and all these different ways that they can project their terrorist approaches. And so I think we need to support our troops. I think the president's made a tough decision. The time to act is now, and just dawdling and kicking it down the road is not a responsible approach. And so I hope they get their objectives done with a minimal loss of life for our brave men and women serving our armed forces. I know our folks always, and you know this, John, from the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan, we try to hit military targets. You hate to have any collateral damage in it. So I think we're doing a good job. We're on the right track. Need to degrade them. I like that most of their fleet has been sunk, and so this is something that has been neglected. You cannot deal with these autocratic theocrats. They have a mindset that is contrary to our Jeffersonian principles, and the people of Iran and the Persians who live here in the U.S., the ones who want freedom and greater personal freedoms and liberty, are happy with this hopeful change. But
and there is a difference between, we don't want to kill civilians. They are fine with it. And everybody needs to pull focus on that. All right, Governor Allen, I appreciate the chance to see you. Happy birthday late. I hope it was a great weekend of celebrations for you.
It was, except for the stinking knee rehab. I'm looking forward to my next birthday when I'll be much more mobile.
It's great. You're looking good, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you always. Governor, thank you.
Thank you, John, for standing strong for freedom.
Yes, sir. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dr. Michael Shires from the American First Policy Institute is with us. Stay here on the Reid Revolution. We're back on the Reid Revolution. I'm John Reid, and this weekend, because it's the 250th celebration anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, I'm trying to go every week to a different historic site in Virginia. A couple of weeks so far, I've missed it, but this weekend I had the chance to go with Jim Herring, who some of you have been following on Facebook. He's got this really interesting thing where he shows the most popular memes in the country every day. Hundreds of thousands of people are watching this thing every day. Very interesting. But anyway, Jim and I went out to George Washington's birthplace near Wakefield, and then we drove over to Fredericksburg and saw Ferry Farm, where George Washington was a boy. And I thought it was interesting. I went across the street and didn't get to go into Mary Washington's home, George Washington's mother's home, but went to her tomb yesterday. It was really interesting. And I grew up in a family where we did those kinds of trips on a regular basis. That was just kind of one of the things. My parents were both from Virginia, so visiting Virginia attractions was a part of our family tradition. And we always talked about why it was so important that we had a leader like George Washington who didn't make himself king, and the principles of American representative democracy, a republic. And I'm just not sure that that's a part of the formal education that young people get today. And I question, in most families, is that what you all do? Is that what you used to do? Is that what your children and grandchildren are doing today, where you go on a family trip and you have a little picnic out at George Washington's farm? Dr. Michael Shires is with the American First Policy Institute, and he's talking about civics education formally. And I appreciate you joining us. What's your assessment of that? Do you think that's I'm underestimating how many people still have that as a part of their family tradition to appreciate the United States and the history of their home state? And good morning to you.
Well, good morning, and it's great to be with you. I mean, the reality is, and I loved hearing your stories about your family doing it, but so many Americans today, I think, trust the schools to do it. And, you know, we've done some work. The Secretary of Education, Secretary McMahon, and President Trump have used the occasion of our 250th anniversary to kind of launch this national conversation on what it means to be an American and what our responsibilities are as Americans. And so as part of our work here at America First Policy Institute is to lead a coalition of folks looking at this question. And we went out and looked at the data, and the data are not good. If you look at the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the closest we have to a national test on civics, the last time they administered it was 4 years ago now. But what we found out was only 23% of eighth graders were what we would call proficient, that they understood how the American system worked at a grade appropriate level. They knew how to get involved. They knew what the president did. They knew what Congress did. And so, yeah, I mean, the data are not great. When you're talking about less than 1 in 4 basically knowing that, and it has a lot of consequences down the line. But I mean, the key is, and Ronald Reagan's famous line, that we don't pass what it means to be an American in our bloodstream. That freedom is not something that you inherit biologically, but it has to be taught. So many young people in America today are growing up not only not being taught those great stories about George Washington, even the story about the cherry tree and why honesty is important, right? They're not being taught those things, and in fact, in a lot of our schools, they're actually being taught quite the opposite, right? That America was this horrible colonizer that came and really wreaked havoc on the land.
And there is a push, I think, to make everything into mythology. That this is a nice myth, but it's not true, and the reality is really ugly and nasty. And it's almost a way to demoralize anyone who does have confidence and faith and hope in their own society to give up on it. And surprise, surprise, the communists are waiting in the wings to take over for you if you let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, America's an aspiration. We're not perfect. No government's going to be perfect. It's an aspiration. It's about trying to serve your fellow man. It's about trying to put others before yourself. It's about trying to do the right thing. And there are times we fall short of that. And so much of the curriculum today is focused on that and not on, as we saw in the State of the Union last week, right? Not on our heroes. I mean, there is nobody that I can imagine that grew up at least the way you and I did, I think, that would not say, wow, we owe those folks a debt of gratitude and should say special things. But apparently it's perfectly acceptable in today's political environment to do that. And that says a lot about where our society's kind of gotten to. And these narratives are difficult. And you're right when you talk about sort of why would half of 18 to 24-year-olds don't think their vote matters. About 1 in 4 are going to vote. I mean, think about that. That means 3 in 4 are expecting not to vote. I mean, that's just kind of terrifying.
They'll be surprised when they're overtaken at the ballot box and the end result is pretty negative. How do you fix that? We've got Hillsdale College, which I think has a pro-Western viewpoint, truth and beauty. One of the things that they, the search for absolute truth, eternal truths. That used to be, if you go back to ancient Greece, used to be the mindset of academics and intellectuals, was to find things like mining for a little nugget of gold, something that they could say, this is truth. And that seems to have been lost. The curriculum seems to have been overtaken by people who hate the United States. Is there a solution in the next few years while we've got President Trump in office to fix this?
Well, there's certainly a big conversation going on. So AFPI, where I am, America First Policy Institute, is leading a coalition of over 57 organizations that are putting together materials and resources. And we're kind of thinking about 4 levels of conversation. I mean, there is a national level. That's clearly what's unfolding now. But the states have to play an important role, the school districts themselves. Parents are the most important actors. And then, especially as school choice starts to take hold, when you build new schools, how do you build these things? So we're putting together materials for kind of all 4 of those groups, but it's really about a national conversation. The best part is the next 4 months are the perfect window to have it, because I still remember the bicentennial. I'm old enough to remember growing up collecting my little bicentennial coins. I still have a collection of quarters.
1976. There was a lot going on then. But we were kind of mired in a lack of self-confidence under President Carter at that time as well.
We were, but here's the thing: there are new stories every day of American heroes. I mean, we saw that in the State of the Union. We see that every time somebody goes and takes a chance to build a business in your community and then pays that back by helping the school, right? I mean, these heroes happen every day. We need to focus on the stories that tell the wins of being American in so many ways. And I mean, it's kind of incumbent on all of us who've lived the American dream and get to live the freedom that America is to constantly be telling that story and constantly living that story so that we can be an example for the rest of the world. And so, we're working with Hillsdale and Turning Point USA and, like I said, 57 other coalition partners on this as part of this of the initiative out of the Secretary's office. But at the same time, every one of us needs to be one of those folks that's constantly reminding our friends and our families. I mean, we used to have a tradition, we still have a tradition that I carried on with my sons. We read the Declaration of Independence on July 4th as a family. And while much of the document is kind of mired in the history of the time, just those opening 3 or 4 paragraphs really kind of transform how you think about the holiday.
Well, if you read it today, I think there'll be some echoes where you're going, wait a minute, we're tolerating this in 2026, and they went to war over that in 1776. Maybe we've become a little too passive about what we're willing to accept from government reaching into our lives.
There's a lot of that, I think, going on, and especially in our educational system. I mean, the whole purpose of public schools was to raise up, it was the educated elect, right? It was Jefferson's ideal that every citizen would know what they need to know to help hold their elected officials accountable, but more importantly, to have the civic virtues, that commitment to community service, to following the laws, to serving in the military if there's a need, right? All of those kind of civic virtues were a key part of the vision behind public schools. And our public schools have really dropped the ball on this in so many ways. And that's an important part of why school choice, as we create more schools, we want to make sure that narrative continues in those new schools.
School choice is really important. It was one of the things that the lady who ran against me beat up on me about, was that she is 100% committed, not to the public school student, but to the public school unions, and making sure that those jobs are untouchable, and that the left continues to run the curricula that is used in those schools. Speaking of the books that these students are taught and are forced to read, I think it's different. I kept all of my books, and they're sitting in the attic, and occasionally I go up there and move stuff around. And the narrative in those books is very different from what I see with family members who are in school today. Is there a new collection of books and curriculum aids that do tell a story that results in 18 years, when the person hits 18, that they are that informed citizen who actually loves the country instead of hating it? They want to make it better, whatever that means, instead of wanting to just trash the system.
Absolutely. And I mean, books are, there's a lot more digital resources today.
Right,
I mean, but the good news about that is the incremental cost of getting another digital resource is zero, right? I mean, literally, these things are widely available. Hillsdale has put together an amazing curriculum. Part of those resource kits that I was talking about that we're putting together are actually roadmaps for the things that you would need to help create the kind of learning environment that you're talking about.
Well, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to announce the Reid Revolution tour of Virginia for the 250, and we'll include some of the places that I've already been, like the George Washington sites in Virginia that I went to yesterday, with the hope that we can help guide families that want to take this opportunity this year to visit those sites, and then offer a little bit of a narrative. One of the things, the guy who walked us through at Ferry Farm yesterday was obviously very enthusiastic about the site, and I think he comes from an archaeological background, so it shouldn't be surprising that he talked about the things that have been found at the archaeological site, matching the pottery with we found this piece of pottery, and look, we have gone to an antique dealer, and this is the exact same set it was here when George Washington was a child. And I'm appreciative of that. But I do think there's almost a self-censorship that is happening today, that instead of telling the story about the cherry tree, chopping down the cherry tree, and I cannot tell a lie, who knows whether that's true or not, but without even bringing that type of narrative up, those things seem to have gone by the wayside. I joke with people, because so many wokesters have taken over Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home in Virginia, that you feel like you've gone to Sally Hemings' house, and you're hearing about the rumor, unsubstantiated, about a love child with Sally Hemings, instead of about the third president of the United States, who wrote the Declaration of Independence and was very important person in crafting the mindset of the American theology, if you will. You just don't get that when you go to visit these sites anymore.
You don't. I mean, I took a tour of Civil War sites in Virginia actually a couple years ago. Same kind of experience, and I did it with my sons, who were, actually it was, I guess, 10 years ago now, who were 16 and 18 at the time. And it's so amazing. It's so fun to watch the next generation just connect the place with the stories and the history. And I mean, a big part of what we need to do as a nation is not rediscover, but continue to tell. I mean, the immigrants that come to this country, interestingly enough, are some of the biggest storytellers, in terms of telling what it means to be an American and appreciating it. Jorge Galicia, I spoke at an event with him, who came from Venezuela and was telling the horrors of what happened in Venezuela and how appreciative he was of being here. And I mean, I think that, these are the stories that we need to get into the conversation. And it's interesting because, under the umbrella of diversity, this history doesn't matter anymore. It's like, no, these people put every single thing on the line. They put their lives, they put their fortunes, they put their livelihoods, they put their families at risk to launch this country. And every generation since then has taken similar risks. And all of those stories, I mean, the story of Valley Forge and the suffering that happened for those troops. I mean, 250 years ago today, the Revolutionary War was happening. North Carolina was just there last weekend, had this great story about a battle at Moore's Bridge, and how they stopped a regiment of British soldiers from, accepting reinforcements in the city nearby. People were putting their lives on the line 250 years ago to create this opportunity that we get to take for granted today.
Yeah. Well, I hope that everyone who's inclined to join the Democrat Party and the leftist movement will pause and think about what am I a part of? If you join a revolution, they don't have a very good track record around the world. And even if something good does come from it, there's a lot of destruction in the interim, and you lose a generation or two or more of prosperity and peace for the people. And you need to think long and hard before you join in something that is that damaging, especially when you're tweeting about the revolution on an expensive piece of equipment that the rest of the world would love to have, but you have, and you're driving in a car on a road that's paved in a society like this. I would think twice before you overturn that.
Well, and you don't have to go very far back in history. And I will say our history scores were worse than our civic scores, but you don't have to go I mean, you've got Cuba today, the lights are out. You've got Venezuela. I mean, you don't have to go back very many years to see how these alternative systems just don't work. And I mean, I suspect we'll get some great evidence out of New York City. We have California today. I mean, there are lots of examples of how these big government socialistic programs just don't provide the answers.
Yeah. Well, we're paying attention. Where can we go to follow your work, Dr. Shires?
So AmericaFirstPolicy.com, all one word. Our website is there. We have links on civics education. We call it the Freedom 250 Project. And so you can look for that on Google as well, and you will find that quickly.
All right. Well, I appreciate your work, and will be one of the people tracking you, Dr. Mike Shires of the America First Policy Institute. And forgive me for keeping you holding for a couple of minutes. I appreciate you being willing to wait. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. Producer Dan will rejoin us. We've got the best and the worst of the internet in segment 4 in just a moment on the Reid Revolution. We're burning through this show, Producer Dan.
Pop that top, yeah.
I know. It's not a beer. It's a soda water. A little early for a beer.
Oh, boy.
You know what? Even this weekend, I went to a bunch of different things. I just am not interested in drinks. And I feel like there's so much bad stuff happening that I kind of need to stay grounded. You know, last year during the campaign, I stopped drinking completely. I mean, not even a glass of wine at events, because I just thought I have to not be overly emotional. I have to be stoic and thoughtful. And, you know, even though I'm not a candidate right now, I still feel like there's so much baloney that's happening all around me. That kind of indulgence just doesn't feel right these days. So
Well,
here's
you know my thought on all of that.
here's
yeah.
to Monday. I'll have some soda water.
Yeah, there you go.
What'd you do
I usually
this
have
weekend?
a drink over by my station here that I try to drink while I'm off camera, but I forgot to bring it to my station this morning from my refrigerator, which is only about 5 feet away.
You
but
mean
yeah.
a water?
It's a Sprite Zero, I think. Sprite Zero is
Okay.
usually
Well,
my
when you say a
of
drink,
choice.
people assume you're. Don't get it confused. I usually have a
Well, that's what
drink at
people say,
7
like,
a.m.
oh, you don't drink? I say, of course I drink. I drink water. I drink
Yeah.
calorie-free soda. I just
All
don't
right, what do we
drink
got for the
alcohol.
best and the worst of the internet today? And
Well-
you know, people should know at 3:00 in the morning when I cannot sleep,
Yeah.
and this has been a horrible thing since the election. I just can't sleep. I've got too much on my mind. I'm worried about everything, money and politics and the rest of it, and I got to get over it. Alonzo keeps telling me, I've never had a gummy. Are you familiar with these?
Melatonin gummy, or are
Well,
we
I
talking
don't know.
about
Is it
another type of gummy?
melatonin or is it whatever's in
Like a
marijuana?
CBD type kind of thing. Okay.
CBD. What is? I don't know what CBD is really, except that
cannabis. Yeah.
I don't
ask
like it.
our-
I don't.
Our
I'm not
former colleague
interested.
at WRVA, Germ. Yeah, he would know all about that, I think.
Well, apparently, supposedly it makes you sleep, but I don't want to sleep that way. I want to sleep because I have peace of
Right.
mind, not because some substance has put me under. But I have to admit, I'm not sleeping well. I'm worried about a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And so I guess my point in telling
Aren't we
people
all?
that is that I'm texting stuff to producer Dan at 3:00 in the morning. Do you
I
hear
was
that
up this,
coming?
I was up this last night at 3 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, I saw.
Oh, did
some
you
of it.
see the
responded
stuff I
to
was
you.
sending?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I had an odd sleep schedule this weekend. And did not realize until I think hours before Sunday morning, technically, that this weekend was Spring Forward weekend. I hope that you changed your clocks. You must have, because you signed on.
Yeah, well, now almost every clock in the house is digital, so
just
it
automatic.
adjusts on its own.
Yeah,
except for the one
yeah.
over the stove and the microwave. Yeah, but
Yeah,
all right.
same
So
here
what
at
do we
my
got?
place.
I sent
All
you
right,
my stuff. What did you pick?
Well, I remind everybody that we've been on Punch Watch, for a
Oh,
little
yes,
while
Punch
here,
the Monkey.
and here's John with Punch.
I think
if
that's a
everybody remembers
cute
Punch the
picture,
Monkey.
but these jerk women, there are 2 or 3 real jerks out there who think this is a horrible picture. I think it's cute. It's obviously AI. Maybe you don't know. I did not fly to. It's possible that I would have gotten crazy and flown to Japan to meet Punch the Monkey. That is not inconceivable, but this is an AI picture. I think it's really cute. But some of these women do
it's
not.
great.
I don't
And
know.
well, speaking of AI,
Yes.
I'd love to say that this is real. It's pretty
What is
obviously
this?
not. But Punch has had enough. He's taken enough, and now he's gonna tell these monkeys, these other monkeys, whose boss
Who've been
he is-
abusing him.
He is
They've been
pushing
attacking
back.
him.
He is
Okay.
pushing back, and
What do
this
you
is
got?
what Punch. This is what Punch had to do.
Do you know the audience was here at the zoo when Punch the Monkey started doing this to these awful monkeys that treated him so badly? But seriously, Dan, that's hilarious. But people, I can't tell the difference. I mean, it's slowed down and it's silly, so you know with the music that it's fake. But if you just looked at it, you might think that's real. You might think, I mean, it looks real,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's
Oh,
not
no,
an
I mean,
animated thing. It looks real.
what computers are capable of doing, and this AI technology can accomplish these days is just remarkable on the one hand, and probably a bit scary on the other. But yeah, it's at least in this context, it's pretty enjoyable.
Well, in this context, it's funny, but I'll tell you, I do, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, I find myself questioning everything I see. Like, I don't want to be emotionally manipulated into anger or sadness or a political movement based on garbage that is, completely fabricated. And that's a problem. All right, what else do we have?
So in the wake of what has happened in Venezuela and Iran, respectively, we had another AI video emerge this past week that I thought was sort of interesting, and this is it here: Trump disappearing act.
It's like a magic show. What is that, Maduro and
And the crowd goes wild.
you've got all of the conservative leaders, Milei,
Internationals,
and that crowd. Okay, that's
Yeah,
clever.
and then-
That's clever.
Well, this was one you sent me, and it's amusing. I'll just let it speak for itself. The title is Black MAGA. Black MAGA.
Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA. Donald Trump, yeah, that's my president. Donald Trump, the first black president. Ever seen a black patriot? Yeah, we exist. The Democrats use my color just to stay rich. Indict my president, you might as well indict me too. Call me your Uncle Tom, but really what Obama do? Not a damn thing, Trump.
There you go. See, Democrats, that worries them because they think that they own certain demographics of the voting population, that they can manipulate people into constantly voting Democrat, whether they deliver for them or not. And Trump is one of the people who has managed to break some of that up. I mean, not 100%, because there are people who just will not move politically. But we should take that music, and then whenever we have a black issue, that'll be our theme song.
It's like our update music, like Rush used to have.
Right?
Well, I have
For
many
Black
questions
MAGA.
about that video, but my big question is,
Yeah.
why is Bill Cowher in there? What's going on with this guy? That's my who is this?
Well, hold on. I got to Google
He's having a
who
great
that
time.
is.
the white MAGA guy in there. So yeah, with the mustache.
Oh,
But looks
yeah.
just like Bill Cowher, the old Steelers coach. But I was
Wouldn't know
what is
him.
do-
But
what
anyway.
is going on?
Okay.
Yeah, so those were my
The joke
my
is
three,
lost on me.
Three
Okay.
videos of the day. I thought, like, wow, what is going on there? But yeah, so
All right.
But,
Always interesting to see what's floating around on the internet. Well, you saw the IED being thrown in New York,
yeah, yeah,
near Gracie Mansion, and I think this is important. This is how dishonest reporters can spin something. This is the textbook example of spin. Okay, you've got a right winger. I don't know this Jake Lang guy. I think once I looked him up, I recognized him from some videos. I mean, he's very provocative. But being provocative in the United States is only wrong, I guess, if you're a conservative, right? If you're a lefty, you're applauded for being provocative. But this Jake Lang guy goes and he's anti-Islam, really kind of aggressively in your face. Look, if one side's going to do it, then I think that it's probably legitimate. We're reaching a place where I think Jake Lang is raising an alarm that people should pay attention to. Even if you don't subscribe to the way he does this, there's an important issue that's being discussed here. So he's having an event over near Gracie Mansion, which is the home of the mayor of New York. A group of, I don't know if they're radical or not, but they're Muslim supporters, throw real IEDs, improvised explosive devices, at Jake Lang's group. And they wind up arrested. They're screaming, Allah Akbar, it's textbook. And the coverage of it that night and the next day is all about a threat to Mamdani and Gracie Mansion, not the fact that the IEDs were thrown at a conservative protest group. And, whether I agree or not, the left gets to protest, and so does the right in society. I mean, you may not like either side. And personally, I would much rather have an intellectual discussion in the context of a podcast or a radio program or a television program or a university debate, a real debate, not just
and by the way,
a bunch of
people
loud
loved
mouths.
the conversation that we had at the end of last week on the Friday show.
Yeah,
sort of
sure.
Out
Have
of
a
the blue,
discussion.
kind of, we were about to sign off and end up going on for about 25, 30
We need to
minutes about it.
find a nutcase leftist who's willing to come on and engage in that conversation. It would be interesting, right? But anyway, but you get my point about this is the way the news covers things. The story wasn't a threat to Gracie Mansion. The
Right.
The radical Islamists were not trying to bomb
Trying to blow up
Gracie Mansion.
Yeah.
They weren't threatening Mamdani. So why are we acting like that's the threat, that was the issue? No,
Well,
these
that's the
people were
narrative
trying
that
to
must be
attack
served.
conservatives.
Yeah.
And I think it is completely underreported that Mamdani's wife, supposedly, was clicking like on pages that were applauding the slaughter of Jews on October 7th. Now, again, in the interest of fairness, having seen a lot of people who will lie to get what they want to get and to do damage, we need to verify whether that's true or not. But this is, tell me another situation. Let's just say Melania Trump, another first lady, the national first lady, had she been clicking like on, attacks on blacks or attacks on Muslims, I think it would be a problem. And I don't think that story would be kind of a second tier story. Is she the elected official? No, she's not the elected official. But there's something wrong here where we're giving a pass to people for behavior that would not be acceptable if it was occurring on the right, but because it's on the left, it doesn't get extensive coverage. And it actually reveals what I think is true. And I think we're going to get an ugly awakening. There are a group of radical Islamist leaders who are working their way into the American political system, and they are going to help implement Sharia law. They are going to help implement leftist theology related to Islam and other groups to try to take down the West. And if you're not paying close attention, of course you go, oh, that's crazy. That's not true. It is true. And this is one of those moments where you realize, no, wait a minute. If I had seen a video talking about slaughtering Jews, is there any situation where I would click like on that? Tell me. I can't imagine that I would ever do that.
And that goes for me too.
Yeah. So if someone is doing that, and, we're going to go through and we're going to monitor everybody's social media behavior, then do it fairly and recognize that people reveal in new ways today how they really feel about issues. And they should be held accountable for that, especially if it's something like that where you're talking about murdering people. You're talking about slaughtering people. Innocent civilians, no less. I mean, it's not even like I guess you could say you don't like Israel. Okay. I said at the radio station, if you don't like Israel as a government, that is different than saying, I want to slaughter Jewish people. That is different. But so many of the people here try to pretend that they dislike Israel, and what they're really saying is, I want to stomp on Jews. And we need to be sophisticated enough to recognize when that is being revealed to us. And I think that Mamdani, I never had any question about who he was. He's a radical Islamist.
Yep.
Why else would you be picking somebody who's 34 years old who's never done anything? Never led anything, never done anything, never achieved anything to be the mayor of the biggest city in America. Because the radical Islamists are funding him and they're pushing him. Same thing with Ghazala Hashmi. Does it make any sense for some stupid poetry teacher from some school in Richmond to be in the state Senate and to be running for lieutenant governor? Does somebody explain to me how that makes any sense? It doesn't make any sense. She's being funded by the same people who pushed Mamdani. So don't be surprised when she is very callous about the abuse of Americans and the abuse of Christians and the abuse of Jews, because her core fundamental beliefs, which no one ever bothers to ask her about in a very direct way, are not aligned with the beliefs of this society. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for you to wake up to that. And by the time you wake up to it, it may be too late. You're going to have major conflicts in this society that are going to hurt you and your family. And it's dangerous for me to be the person to bring it up. I wish I wasn't the only one who would do it. I wish that I had backup. Apparently, everybody else is too weak and pathetic to talk about it. So I have a choice. Do I disappear and not talk about it, or do I bring it up? And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. But I mean, what else do you have to see? IEDs being thrown in front of Gracie Mansion at conservatives, and what, you don't give a damn about it? Ghazala Hashmi walking past a reporter talking about a young woman being murdered by an illegal immigrant and rolling her eyes, and her security guy pushing the reporter out of the way. I mean, is anybody going to be held accountable at all? You going to ask any questions at all? Or are you just going to continue to watch this happen right in front of your face and then pretend that everything's okay? Something is seriously wrong here. And there's an attitude that is on display that indicates that these people are not on your side, and they are not traditionalists. This is not just, oh, how wonderful that we've enabled different types of people. It's not just white men anymore who are in leadership. We have all different types of people who will protect and preserve our Constitution and our society. No, they're not. They are not protecting and preserving your Constitution and society. They are deliberately attempting to denigrate it and bring it down. And I hate to be the one to tell you that, and I know it's unpopular. I'm so sorry, but that is the truth. And you need to wake up to it now while you can still fix the situation. And I'm not just going to tell you that's the truth. I'm going to show you situations where this is revealed and hope that you're smart enough to recognize it and then do something about it.
Yep, it is. We're on the verge. We're on the verge, and
of a big problem.
I don't think that we want to become the next Great Britain in that regard.
Well, yeah, Great Britain's got a big issue here, and one of the problems they've got in Great Britain, and I'm kind of worried about going back over there, is that if you dare say anything that is hostile,
right,
to this, what you see right in front of your face, you become the enemy. Even if you're
freedom of speech anymore.
No freedom of speech, and especially if you're a Brit who's been around for, your family's been there for 500 years, you're a target. I mean, they don't want you to say, no, wait a minute, what's happening in my own country? You're not allowed to say it's my own country. You're not allowed to say, no, wait a minute, you're one generation in here and you think you're going to change everything? Wait a second. I'm not on board with that. And that is a real problem. There are more people who are in the Congress who are standing up about this domestically in the United States. And there certainly is a growing movement in Great Britain of people who are seeing college professors and ministers and normal folks be locked up for what they believe. who are saying, wait a minute, this is wrong. This isn't the society that I grew up in, and I'm not interested in becoming a theocracy, especially when it's run from the left or from an Islamic perspective. There are more people who are standing up, but I'm afraid that it may be a little too late. So we need to prevent that from happening in the United States, and I think we're well on our way towards that occurring, and we just can't tolerate it.
Well, that was a point made. Our guest from last week, Andy Bernstein, in his new essay at Capitalism Magazine about this, said that this unholy alliance, if you will, between the Marxists and the Muslims. And Denise, I don't know if you saw what she just wrote in, and I put up on the screen. The Sharia-free caucus in Congress has now grown to 22 states, including 46 congressional members. I did not know that, Denise, so thanks for sharing that. Scary.
Well, it's important.
In my mind.
And if you've not been paying attention, you've got to pay attention. What does that mean? That means that the courts in the United States, the courts in, let's just say, Henrico County, where I live, could say, we will allow a Sharia court to adjudicate this domestic issue. We will allow a Sharia court to adjudicate this business decision. You have a contract, but we're not going to touch it. We will allow the Sharia courts, because you are involved in this society, to make decisions based on a different set of laws than the ones that everybody else lives under. And that's a problem. You know, we do it to a certain extent, I guess, with the Amish, but the Amish are very exclusive and they keep to themselves, right? I mean, is that safe for me to say? I've not lived, there's one little place in Virginia that I encountered during the campaign where the Amish live in Virginia. And I've certainly been in Pennsylvania where there are Amish communities, but their whole point is that they are very resistant to engagement with the rest of the society. That's a problem on some level, but at least they are people who stay to themselves. That's not the situation with the rising Muslim influence in society. And I have to say again, because I know people will say, oh, look at this white guy who is just beating up on Muslims. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing. And I remind you, I lived in the Middle East. And as a gay man in the Middle East, I had a lot of friends of people who were trying to get out of the Middle East or had one foot in and one foot out because they couldn't live their authentic selves in the Middle East, given the hostility towards gay men and women in the Middle East. I'm very familiar with this, and I would assert that I'm much more familiar with it than most of you.
Right.
So I'm not trashing people because of their Muslim faith. I am pointing out that we don't have a good track record around the world of the traditional Western philosophy about freedom coexisting with the most radical vision of Islam. And unfortunately, it doesn't take a large group of people who buy into the radical vision of oppression from Islam to overwhelm everybody else. And we just need to be honest about that. That's a problem.
That's not some sort of a racial prejudice. Islam is not a race. Islam is a philosophy. It's an ideology. That's a choice that people make to follow these radical ideas. That is a chosen thing, and it's no different from choosing to be a communist or a socialist, or at least in terms of the nature of just, this is what I believe in, this I'm going to choose to believe in. It is not saying that you are anti-Arab or anti-Persian or anything else like that.
We've been conditioned to believe, because hypothetically at least, I think this is questionable in the modern era, everyone is, they mouth the words freedom of religion while they bash evangelical Christians. Freedom of religion, they really don't believe that. Here's the problem. I can promise you right now, if anywhere in Virginia there were evangelical Christians who were overtly taking bricks and smashing the heads of gay men and women or interracial couples, right? There are people who send ugly emails about things like that, but if they were committing crime or threatening to commit crime against two protected minority classes, the entire society would be in an uproar about it because they wouldn't accept it from evangelical Christians. And I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of people who are they're watching very closely to see whether the evangelicals behave that way. May I suggest to you that if you are that concerned about evangelical Christians, you need to be at least that concerned, if not more, about radical Islam. And if you have a large Islamic population in your community, does not mean you treat anybody badly, doesn't mean that you harass anyone, doesn't mean that you dump on anybody, discriminate against them, but you need to be alert that there is a movement within that culture that hates the things that you believe are important and true. And it manifests itself in a violent way. And I'm not making that up. That is exhibited around the world. And I don't want to, as somebody who would become the victim of it, I'm not going to sit here and be silent and then just wait till I'm the guy who gets bashed in the middle of the night. And then suddenly everybody pays attention. Hell no, I'm not tolerating that. And I'm going to lay the marker down that I will not tolerate that from anybody, from any religion. And we need people who are going to be tough about this. And right now they're not. They're scared to talk about it.
Well, as some of our loyal followers have mentioned on the chat, we don't need to be concerned about the Amish as a people causing problems. They're not bombing anybody or blowing things up or threatening to do so. There's one group of people basically doing that. It's not the Christians. It's not the Jews. It's not.
It's true.
The Buddhists. It's not
true.
the people who want Jedi Knights to be a religion. It's one group of people.
And we need to be honest enough to say it. And I'm sorry about that. I wish that wasn't the case. And if you're a good person who is not violent, I'm very sorry that you are stuck with this as a reality that you've got to deal with. But then it's incumbent upon you. I mean, I looked up this weekend the Islamic reform movement. Hadn't been around very long, and it hadn't been very successful, to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean that everybody's got to change their opinion, but there's got to be a decision that we're not going to tolerate this type of violent behavior to get your way that has been on display for an extended period of time, not just our era, but for centuries. And this belief that it is acceptable to murder and abuse and enslave people who won't embrace your religion. And, Americans have been fed a lie, and it's a nice lie. It's a pretty lie that everybody's the same wherever you go. And I'm just telling you, 116 countries over the last 40 years of my life, that's not true. It's just not true. People are not the same wherever you go, and their belief system and their value system is not the same wherever you go. And you really do need to be discerning and wise about how you navigate that. If you're traveling around the world, I would love to go visit Syria, or quite frankly, I would have loved to have gone to Iran and seen the amazing glass palaces in Iran from an architectural standpoint, from a historical standpoint, the history of the world. There's a lot of history in Iran, but I'm smart enough to recognize that would be a problem for me. I'd love to go visit North Korea so I could report back to you in a firsthand way what the situation is on the ground in North Korea. But I'm smart enough to understand that is dangerous for me. And it's not just because the government says so. It's a practical issue. And I think we're living in a fantasy world where we've been fed this very pretty, nice lie, and Americans don't want to face the much more ugly reality that we're not all the same, and there's danger. We need to be aware of.
Maybe a rabbit hole to go down another day, but the Muslim community doesn't exactly have China's one-child policy either. So they are trying to overwhelm the world population through.
There are people who will hear you say that, Producer Dan, and they will be very angry and assume that you're spreading some sort of hostility. Please spend a little bit of time. Don't just trust Producer Dan or me.
Yeah,
spend some time. This is being said openly and proudly and loudly. And I do think, I find it odd. The great replacement theory, which is not a theory, if you bring that up, suddenly you're a racist. Well, no, who's the racist? Me acknowledging what's happening demographically, or you for promoting it? I mean, I hear more and more people saying how wonderful it's going to be when whites are in the minority. You think so? Do you think that's going to be wonderful? I don't think that's going to be wonderful, because I look at the way people are behaving today around the world towards whites and Christians and others. And I think, now, wait a minute. What should I expect when I am in the demographic minority? To be treated nicely? To be treated fairly? Doesn't seem like that's working out real well in other parts of the world. And I am a realist. I recognize that people who are in the majority, it takes a certain type of discipline not to abuse others. I think I've demonstrated that discipline and that commitment to my values. I don't think other people have demonstrated that in their lives or their cultures around the world, and we should be very aware of it and not be celebrating it. Be kind of alarmed that things are going to change, and then once it happens, you can't undo it.
No.
Once you're in the minority and you start to become abused, I hate to say this, there's only one way out, and that is violence, and that's not good for anybody.
John, may I say
careful.
something to piggyback on what Dr. Shires was talking about a few minutes ago?
Sure.
Yeah, I would criticize the founders if you so choose. But what I'm about to say is absolutely indisputable. To a man, they were trying to make the world a freer, more just place than it had ever been. And that distinguishes them from just about everybody in office today who was trying to make the world a less free, less just place than it previously was here. These were great men, and they were good men.
Imperfect, perhaps, but yeah, I think the motivation was just, and you've got to second guess and question what the motivation is from a lot of the leaders that we have today. If you're pushing socialism, and in some cases you're pushing flat out communism, your hypothesis at this stage doesn't count, because we have a century of exhibited failure for these philosophies, and we should push back on it. Anything that even smells like it, we should push back on it. And we have 1,000 years of bad results when it comes to Islamic leadership, and I'm sorry about that. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's the case. And I'm seeing nothing right now that makes me have confidence that this new generation of leaders is going to behave much differently than previous generations. And until I see something different, you're not going to have me sit silently and be abused or taken over. I'm just not gonna.
America is the greatest country in the history of the world, and at a minimum, it is the first moral country in the history of the world. And we should be very, very proud of it, and we should be very protective of her.
Well, on that note, let us take a break, and we will come back tomorrow. And who do we have tomorrow, Producer Dan?
Oh, let's see here. I think we are still building the show out, but we should have, let's see. I know that we have a guest on at 10:45. Christine, I'm going to blow the pronunciation of this name. Sinoweski? Does that sound
okay?
Christine Sinoweski, President and CEO of Mediapedia, and she's going to talk about something that we've been talking about a bit today: the bias in legacy media, but in particular covering the attack on Iran. And,
okay.
Yeah. So that will be one guest for tomorrow. We'll get another one before the day's out.
Tomorrow. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's good. Listen, Producer Dan, I always appreciate your work and the chance to talk to you. And
likewise.
I would encourage, now tomorrow, can I tell you something we're going to do? Tomorrow, if
Yes.
you would like to be supportive of this podcast, we're going to give you the opportunity to sign up to be supportive financially of the podcast, because, you may have noticed that Producer Dan is here and I am here, and it's kind of a two-person show, and we're trying to grow this audience, and it would be very, very helpful if both of us could afford our mortgage and pay some of the bills that go along with this program. So I will just mention tomorrow we'll be providing you the opportunity to be one of the supporters of the program, and the commercial element of this program will begin this month as well. There's a lot of people who have said, hey, I'd like to be supportive, and you have a significant audience. So we'd like for your audience to be aware of our business and the work we're doing. We'll share some of that with you as we continue this week too. In the meantime, follow us on both of our pages on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on YouTube. And of course, if you don't have time to watch this on your computer while you're at work or at home, you can listen to the audio version on Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to do it for us on this Monday morning. I'm John Reid. See you tomorrow on the Reid Revolution.